Hello again. In this video, I'm going to go over the quotient rule. Now, to illustrate the quotient rule, what I want to do is come up with a very simple example and show you why the quotient rule works. Okay, so let's look at this example. Let's say we have f of x is equal to x to the 7th and g of x is equal to x squared. And we want to find the derivative of f divided by g, which is called a quotient. Now, if you were to give me this problem, I would simply take f and divide it by g, and I would do that first, and then I would take the derivative. And this is a case where we can actually simplify this by dividing it out. So this would be x to the 5th, because 2 of the x's cancel. Okay, and then I would take the derivative of that using the product rule. Okay, and so that's just 5x to the 4th. So we know this is the correct answer. But there are going to be cases when we're not going to be able to divide this out and simplify it. Okay, and that's probably the more common case. And so let's try to speculate as to what this might be, this derivative might be, if we can't simplify these or simplify this quotient. Okay, I think your first thought, right, intuitively might be the derivative of f divided by g. It seems like this would be the derivative of f divided by the derivative of g. I think that's a reasonable first guess. And so let's see if that's true. Okay, let's see what we get if we do this. All right, well, f prime would be 7x to the sixth power. G prime would be 2x to the first power. And you can see that this would reduce to x to the 5th, so it's really 7 halves times x to the 5th power. But that's not the same as what we got here, and we know this is correct. So apparently this is not correct. So be careful about this trap. The derivative of f divided by g is not f prime divided by g prime, even though it seems like it should be. It's actually equal to this, and this is called the quotient rule. Okay, and so let's see if we get the same thing. Okay, so let's find the derivative of f divided by g, where f is this and g is this. But this time we're going to use the quotient rule. Okay, so the quotient rule says the derivative of f divided by g is g times f prime minus f times g prime divided by g squared. Okay, so g is the bottom one, which I'm going to call the low. Okay, so it's x squared. And then f prime, that's the derivative of the high function. Okay, so the derivative of the high function will be 7x to the 6th. Okay, minus f, which is the high, x to the 7th, times g prime, which is the derivative of the low function, so 2x. And then all of that's going to be divided by g squared, so the low function squared. Okay, and so let's just simplify this. Of course, this would give us 7x to the 8th, adding exponents, and this would give us minus 2x to the 8th. All over x to the 4th. Here you multiply exponents. Okay, and of course you can simplify this on top. Those are like terms, so you're just left with 5x to the 8th power over x to the 4th. And of course this cancels to x to the 4th, so you end up with 5x to the 4th power. And wouldn't you know it, it's the same thing as what we got here, which we know is correct. So yes, the quotient rule indeed works. Okay, so be careful not to fall into this trap of thinking that it's f prime divided by g prime, because it's not. It's a little more complicated than that. It's actually this. the quotient rule. Okay, so having said that, why don't we just practice a few more of these. Okay, so let's find the derivative of this. Now this is a case where you can't simplify this before you find the derivative. Okay, and so we're only left with using the quotient rule. We can't simplify it first. Okay, so again, this is what the quotient rule says. The derivative of f divided by g is g times f prime minus f times g prime all over g squared. Now here's one way to remember this. Remember I called this the high function and this the low function. So you can think of this as sort of a song. This is the low, and then d is going to stand for derivative. So this is going to be d high, because that's the derivative of the high function, minus the high function. That's what f is. And then the derivative of the low, so I'm going to call that d low. And then this is the low squared. I'm going to call that low times low. Okay, so if you want to think of this as a nice little drinking song, it's one way of remembering this, is it's low d high minus high d low over low low. Okay, and about the only thing that you'll need to remember is whether you start with low or high in the song. And so one way I like to remember it is this is a drinking song. So the only reason you're going to go to the bar and drink is because you're kind of low. So you start off low, and then you get high, drinking, but it doesn't really end up well because anytime you drink, you just get more depressed, and so it ends up being low, low. You're twice as low. So how do you remember to start with high or low, right? You start off low, and then you know that's the reason you go to the bar, like I said, and then you get high drinking and you're happy, but then you just end up getting more low, low. Okay, so that's a nice little way of remembering that. Anyway, so having said that, let's find this derivative using the quotient rule. All right, so it's low d high, so the derivative of the high, okay? So that'd be 2x plus 3. Minus, all right, low d high minus high and then d low, derivative of the low, so that'd be 2x all over low low. Which of course you can write as x squared minus 1 squared, okay? Okay, let's just simplify this. So that's what we get from the quotient rule, and then we can simplify it. We can FOIL this out. So that's going to be 2x cubed, and this will be 3x squared minus 2x minus 3. So just FOIL that out, and then distribute the 2x to each of these terms. So you're going to get 2x cubed, 6x squared, and plus 8x. All over this. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and distribute this minus sign. Of course, you have to distribute it to every one of these terms, but it's just going to change the sign of each of these. Okay, and so you're going to end up with a negative for each of them. Okay, and so notice these cancel out, and then you're left with 3x squared minus 6x squared, which is minus 3x squared, and then minus 2x minus 8x, that's minus 10x, and then minus 3 all over this. Okay, and maybe to clean it up a little bit, you might want to pull the minus sign out of each of these terms. And maybe write it like that. And you can even put this minus sign, this minus sign can go on top or in front or in bottom. So let's just put it in front. Okay, so that's your final answer. Okay, let's try this one. Okay, here's a case where the product rule really comes in handy. Now, when you first look at this, you might not think there's a reason to use the product rule because there doesn't seem to be any division going on. But remember that e to the minus x, that's the same as 1 over e to the positive x. That's what a negative exponent does. Okay, you can always write a negative exponent like this. Okay, so this is actually the derivative of 1 over e to the x, e to the positive x. And now you do have a quotient. Okay, and so now we can apply the quotient rule. Okay, so it's going to be low e to the x, derivative of the high. Well, the derivative of a constant is 0, so that would be times 0, minus the high, that's the 1, and then the derivative of the low. Now remember, the derivative of e to the x is e to the x. Okay, so low, derivative of high, minus high, derivative of low, over low, low. That's what you get. Now, of course, here, since you have the same base, you can add these exponents, and that would just be e to the 2x. And then on top, you get 0 minus e to the x, and 0 minus e to the x is just minus e to the x. Okay. And actually, you can simplify this. It actually makes more sense for me not to combine these. So let's just go back and write it as e to the x times e to the x, because this is minus 1 times e to the x. It's the same thing as minus e to the x. And one of these e to the x's cancels with one of these. And so it's really just minus 1 divided by e to the x. Okay? Okay, so that's how you use the product rule. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.